quiet boy. He was the kind of boy you might easily pass on the street and forget. His name was Eli. He walked with his shoulders slightly stooped, his eyes always downcast, as if the weight of something unseen rested atop him, even in bright sunlight. Day after day, he came to the small square outside his school, waiting for the bell, waiting for recess, waiting for something to change. But he never said much. He rarely laughed. He rarely raised his voice. So he was known simply as the quiet boy. And yet, inside him, a storm was churning. Eli lived in a modest home at the edge of town. A single room, peeling paint, a tiny wardrobe that once belonged to his father. His mother, Maria, worked early mornings as a cleaner in the big offices downtown. She came home late, exhausted, her uniform still dusty, her hands still carrying the ache of work. Eli would sit at the little wooden table in their home, doing his homework by the flicker of a lamp, listening to the drip of a leaky pipe in the corner. He didn't complain. He just absorbed the quiet, and inside, he made it his companion. At school, his classmates ran and shouted at lunch, but Eli remained near the wall, his tray of food untouched until someone came to invite him. Often no one did, so he ate in silence, staring at the cracked tile beneath the table. Sometimes a twig of grass outside the window caught his eye, bending gently in the wind. He thought, how nice it would be to bend like that grass and then to rise again. You could say he had a dream. Not a grand one, not a loud one. He wanted to draw. At first, just little sketches during class. The schoolyard, his mother cleaning, the old bicycle in the garage. Then more serious drawings. The cracked street pavement with its weeds. A small bird perched on the power line at dawn. His own reflection in a puddle after rain. He carried a small notebook, its cover bent, its pages stained with eraser dust. He drew in the margins, in the waiting periods, in the stolen moments. But his drawings were private. He never showed them, because in the world around him, quiet boys didn't raise their hands. Quiet boys didn't stand up in class. Quiet boys didn't dream out loud. So Eli remained quiet until the day the world around him turned a little quieter and then a little louder. It started with his mother's cough. A small, dry cough at first, but then worse. Late nights when Maria didn't come home until after dark. The next morning she awoke pale. The cleaning job, the bending, the chemical smell, it had finally taken its toll. Eli watched her with worried eyes, but said nothing. He could hear the doctors talk in the hospital room. It's advanced, we'll try, costs will be high. He overheard the words, the tremor in his mother's voice. But he stayed silent, because there was nothing to say, and his mouth felt heavy with unsaid words. Then one evening, as the lamps in the hospital hallway glowed dimly, Maria held Eli's hand and whispered, "I'll be fine. Don't you worry." He nodded. He squeezed her hand. He whispered nothing, but his quiet nod was the loudest thing she heard that day. At school the next week, the playground looked the same, the bell rang the same, the children shouted the same, but Eli felt something shift inside. He realized the space of silence he had lived in was shrinking. The room of his quiet was being invaded by worry, by fear, by responsibility. He knew that something had to change, not for him, but for his mother. So Eli made a decision. He would try, quietly, but he would try. He stopped drawing for a few days. His hand hovered above the page, unsure. Then one afternoon he took his notebook and showed it to his art teacher, Ms. Roberts. At first, he handed it over with trembling fingers. He didn't speak. He just waited. Ms. Roberts flipped through the pages. She paused. She looked up. She asked, "Did you draw all these?" And he nodded, his face flush. Then tears welled up. And for the first time, in front of someone other than his mother, he spoke, "I want to make something that makes her proud." Ms. Roberts winked and said, "You already have." That moment broke his silence. Eli began staying after school, using the art supplies in the classroom. He sketched, he painted, he erased, he tried again. He drew tall buildings, tiny birds, tired hands, hopeful skies. He drew the moment his mother returned home late and the moment she fell asleep on the kitchen table. He drew the way the evening light caught the dust in their room. He drew the little smile his mother gave him when she woke up and found him reading beside her. He captured the small miracles of the everyday that people often ignore. Word spread quietly. The quiet boy's drawings were good. One day, a flyer appeared on the artboard. Local art competition, open to all students. Eli looked at it. The prize was modest, certificates, paints, maybe a small cash prize. But Eli knew that for his mother, modest was enough. He registered. On the day of the competition, the classroom was buzzing with eager students, bright works, bold colors, loud statements. Eli arrived with his entry, an unassuming piece of paper, a pencil sketch of a pair of worn hands holding a small sapling, the sapling reaching toward a window where sunlight poured in. He titled it, Hope in Quiet Hands. When the judges came around, they paused at his work. They asked questions. What does this mean? He cleared his throat. In a steady voice, he said, My mother's hands. Her work. The sapling is me. I draw so I can grow. I draw so our home grows too. That voice, low but clear, carried more power than any shout in the hall. They awarded him second place. Not first. He didn't win the big prize. But when he returned home and showed the certificate to his mother, her eyes filled with tears and she embraced him. You've made me proud, she said. You always have. And Eli realized that quiet strength was just as loud as any triumph. In the following months, things were still hard. Maria's treatment cost money. There were nights when the lamp flickered and the cold pipe dripped. But now there was something new, a sense of purpose. The quiet boy sketched a plan. He took part-time jobs, folding flyers at the community center, delivering newspapers at dawn. He woke early. He worked late. He drew when he could. He refused to let silence mean nothing. And in his quiet moments, he whispered to the sapling. He whispered, grow. Let me grow. Because he had learned something important. That you don't need to roar to be heard. That sometimes the softest voice carries the greatest weight. Years later, when Eli stood at a small exhibition in the city, his drawings hung on the wall. They told stories of hands, of silence, of growth. A young woman looked at the sketch of a pair of hands and said, This touches me. And Eli realized, yes, his quiet had become something others could feel. His silence had become a bridge. He walked over to his mother, now healthier, now smiling again. He gently squeezed her hand. No words needed, because sometimes the quiet says everything. And in the hush of that moment, the world leaned in to listen.